What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best builds in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This setup's main focus is to lock down your enemies with quick freezes that last a long time. Even bosses are vulnerable to being frozen, and we can just lay down insane amount of DPS while they are stuck doing no damage. Your main gameplay loop will revolve around using the Ice Strike to close the gap between the enemies. Then drop the Tempest Belt to help you do more damage, and then activate your Charged Staff, Ice Strike, and the Shattering Palm. If you're looking for the most powerful monk build that freezes and builds upon insane attack speed and cold damage, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the monk, and our ascendancy is the invoker. Then for the first skill we have the Ice Strike with support gems such as the Cold Infusion, Martial Tempo, Crescendo, Primal Armament, and Inspiration. Then second we got the Shattering Palm with Execute, Blind, and the Ice Bite. Then next we got the Herald of the Ice with Magnified Effect, Cold Mastery, and Elemental Focus. Next we have the Ghost Dance with the Fast Forward and Clarity. Next up we have the Charged Staff with the Perpetual Charge, Persistence, and Maim. Then for one of the last ones we got the Unbound Avatar with Fire Mastery and the Lightning Mastery. Then next we have the Charge Infusion with no support gems. Next up we got the Tempest Belt with Rage, Heavy Swing, Glacianation, and Overabundance. Then for one of the last ones we have the Wind Dancer with Culling Strike, Cannibalism, and Vitality. And finally for the last one we are using the Combat Frenzy with Profusion and Precision. Most of this setup is structured around using the Ice Strike and the Tempest Belt to delete enemies in split seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their speed and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the skill speed node. Then go like this until we get these three, so Flow like Water, Mindful Awareness, and the Step like Mist. Then next we keep continuing going like this, and take all of these, so the Flow State, Crashing Wave, then also Moment of Truth, and finally the Conservative Casting. Next we move forwards until we are here, and then we take the Killer Instinct and the Tenfold Attacks. Then next we now take the left side and keep going until this half circle, while on our way taking all of these blue nodes, as well as the Resonance Keystone, and then stopping at this Deep Chance node. Then now we want to circle back a little, and keep going up top until we get to this Spectral Ward. Then afterwards we go till the end, and now take the right side, and then get all of these nodes that you can see right here. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Lead Me Through the Grace, then second get and Protect Me from Harm, then third we want to get I Am the Blizzard, and then finally for the last one we want an I Shall Rage. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that will spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our Ice Strike monk build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or the essences. Our monk build is also great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into farming boss maps or the essences. So when we start we want to first of all get to this bottom right side like this. Then from here we can go until we get all the way to this point. Then next we get back to the middle and this time take the bottom left side and get all of these passives until this circle. And then when all of these are done, then we go again to the middle and this time take the middle part and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Slicing Quarterstaff with the bonus stats like the increased physical damage, adds more to physical damage, more accuracy, increased crit chance, and attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Veiled Mask with evasion and energy shield, and for extras we want more increased evasion and energy shield. Then also max life and mana, and finally any type of resistance like fire or cold. Then for chest we have the Expert Scalper's Jacket with evasion and energy shield. And for more we want evasion rating, max energy shield, reduced attribute requirements and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the utility belt with 20% quicker flask recovery. And for bonus stats we want max life, cold and lightning resistance. Then for the gloves we got the advanced spiral warp with max life, evasion and energy shield, increased attack speed and fire and cold resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert frayed shoes with evasion and energy shield. And for more we for sure want the increased movement speed, then also max life and mana, and if possible then lightning resistance. Then for our first and second ring we got the same one, so we are going with the amethyst ring, as its base stat gives chaos resistance, and as chaos resistance is not that easy to get, so this is the best place to get free resistance. And then for more we want accuracy, more dexterity and more intelligence. And then finally for amulet we got the azure amulet with increased mana regen, and for more we need accuracy, plus more levels to all spell skills and cold or lightning resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work, and I will show you 2 rotations. So first up we have a very basic rotation, which is meant to clear big monster groups and just weak enemies. So all that we want to do is use the Shattering Palm and then follow that up with the Ice Strikes. The Shattering Palm in this case will act as the first engage mobility tool and to increase our crit rate, so then we can simply spam the Ice Strikes and obliterate enemies in few seconds. Or then the second rotation we mainly use against single targets and bosses. So this time we want to start with using the Ice Strike 4 times. Then next we use the Tempest Belt. Then afterwards 4 more Ice Strikes. Then Charge Staff. Then again 1 more Tempest Belt. And now finally you can keep spamming the Ice Strikes as much as possible. The main idea behind this is to use the Tempest Belt as a buffing tool, because it gives us a lot of damage and some extra attack range buff, so then we can use our Ice Strikes and the Charge Staff as our main DPS skills, and then just rinse and repeat. This build is extremely powerful, so no matter what you do, if you build it right, then you will be doing crazy amount of damage numbers. But if you wanted to know the most optimized skill rotation, then here they are. This setup is the Spirit Minion build, which summons bunch of Raging Spirits by casting the Flame Wall for the offense. And then also for defense, we get to command a minion army. So unlike most other builds where you only command or cast spells, well, in this one we get to do both, and thus increase our DPS even higher. By using specific gear and building our skill tree around nodes like the Power of the Dead, Fear the Dead, Silent Guard and many more, it will enable us to upgrade our minions and projectile area and damage. So if you're ready to explode anyone and everyone that stands in our way, while also getting a skeleton army that follows and protects you, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class we have chosen to go with the Witch, and the ascendancy is the Infernalist. At first glance it looks like we're using way too many skills, but most of them are passive and will work in the background, so we will only use few of them on our skill bar. Then for the first skill we have the Summon Infernal Hound with support gems like the Elemental Army, Meat Shield, Fire Exposure and the Strip Away. Then second we got the Unearth with Minion Instability and the Infernal Legion. Then next we got the Flammability with the Heightened Curse and the Spell Cascade. Then next we have the Skeletal Arsonist with Feeding Frenzy, Scatter Shot and the Martial Tempo. Next we are also using the Flame Wall with the Fortress and the Arcane Tempo. Next we have the Skeletal Warrior with the Brutality, Splinter and the Maim. Then we got the Raging Spirits with the Fire Infusion, Elemental Focus and Emulate. Next we have Pain Offering with Magnified Effect and the Persistence. Then also we're using the Skeletal Storm Mage with Conduction, Stormfire and Overcharge. Next we have Skeletal Cleric with the Ingenuant and Last Gasp. And finally for our last one we got the Grim Feast with no support gems whatsoever. Most of this build is structured around using minions and the Raging Spirits, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually activate in the background. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until about level 25, because the first few levels can be a bit rough until you get the Raging Spirit skill. So first off we have the Unearth with Minion Instability and Brutality. Next we have the Skeletal Sniper with the Martial Tempo and the Scatter Shot. Then next we also got Contagion with Concentrated Effect and Elemental Focus. And then finally, we're using the Flame Wall with Fortress and the Arcane Tempo. This is your basic setup up until we increase our damage. Next up we have our passive tree. For most new players, this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage node, and make our way like this while on our way grabbing the raw destruction and the power of the dead. Then now let's go to the right and get these 2 red nodes and then these 2 more blue ones. Then after that we want to circle back a little and make our way all the way to here to get the pure energy, which will increase our defense, which we desperately need in the early stages. Then now let's go again back to the top, but this time take the left side, and then from here we want to take all of these half circles, so we could get the Essence Infusion, then the Growing Swarm, and also the Dispendable Ward. And now from here, just make your way all the way to the top of the right side. And the order in which you do it doesn't really matter, as long as you follow this path. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning, you want to unlock this Loyal Hellhound for an extra minion and reduce damage taken by 20%. Then second, pick the Altered Flesh. Then next, get the Baited Will for more maximum spirit. And last, pick up these 2 small life nodes, since you want as much life as possible for the Baited Will. And then as far as the attributes go, I recommend to take enough strength and dexterity to meet the gear and support gem requirements, and then use the rest on the intelligence. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Rattling Scepter, which base grants us +2 levels to the minions. And then for the bonus stats, we also want to get increased percentage to the minions, allies deal more physical damage, and just more damage increase in general. And then for the offhand, we got the Blazing Crest Shield with armor and energy shield. And for the bonuses, we want max life and more resistances like fire and lightning. Then for the helmet, we have the Iron Crown with armor and energy shield. For bonuses, we want max life, plus levels to minion skills and more to cold resistance. Then for the chest, we have the Pilgrim Vestments with armor and energy shield. For the extras, we want max life, more to spirit and fire resistance. Then for the belt, we have the Rawhide Belt with increased life recovery to flasks. And for bonuses, we want max life, fire and cold resistance. Then for gloves, we got the Thorn Gloves with max life, fire and cold resistance. Then for boots, we're using the Straw Sandals with energy shield. And for bonuses, we want increased movement speed, max life and cold resistance. Then for the first ring, we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance. And for more, we want max life and attributes like the Strength, Dexterity and Intelligence. While on the second one, we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance. And for more, we want max life, dexterity and intelligence. And then finally for the amulet, we got the Jade Amulet with dexterity, max life, more to spirit and plus levels to minion skills. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So the general gameplay of this build is to summon the Raging Spirits by casting the Flame Wall. Then use the minion command skill provided by the Skeletal Arsonist to deal area-wide damage. You can also cast the Flammability to either reduce enemy damage done or increase your minions' damage. Then as far as utility goes, you want to cast the Unearth on the enemy corpses to spawn an army of the minions that explode when they reach low levels through the minion instability and the Infernal Legion. You also want to buff your army of the minions with the Pain Offering to increase their damage. But as I said, this build is very versatile, so there's no one best way or order that you should use your spells in. What I usually like to do is just to have always my minions up, and then just spam Flame Wall, Flammability and the Unearth. And then for harder boss fights, we can even implement the Pain Offering and other support skills. This setup is super fun and has insane amount of lightning damage. Also, as you can see, it is one of the most visually impressive builds in the game, as the sorceress can paralyze and destroy monsters with a barrage of lightning. Our build has insane amount of AoV and great speed farming potential, by shredding through the maps and all the other endgame content with ease. All of these 3 skills, so the Archmage, the Lightning Incandescent and the Spark skills, together make up the bulk of our insane damage. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the sorceress has many tools to address this problem, And with optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or gear to completely solve this issue. So, if you want to fill out your entire screen with sparks of lightning and speed clear through the hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For the main class we have chosen the Sorceress, and our ascendancy is the Stormweaver. And for our first skill we have the Spark, and we are going with the support gems such as the Pierce, Arcane Tempo, Acceleration, Persistence and Wild Shards. Then second we got the Lightning Conduit with the Controlled Destruction, Elemental Focus, Considered Casting, Lightning Mastery and Execute. Then next we got the Orbs of Storm with Lightning Exposure, Strip Away, Conduction, Fount of Mana and Magnified Effect. Then next we have a Mana Tempest with Inspiration, Premeditation and Murderous Intent. Then next we have Conductivity with gems like the Hex Bloom and the Heightened Curse and Focus Curse. Then next we have the Enfeeble with the Curse Ground and Expands. Then next we have the Voltaic Mark with no gems. Then next we have the Archmage with also no gems selected. And finally for the last one we got the Mana Remnants with Clarity, Vitality and Cannibalism. Next let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup which we need to use up until we unlock the Archmage skill. So first off we are using the Ember Fusillade with Controlled Destruction and Ignition. Then next we have the Spark with the Conduction and Pierce. Then next we also got the Orbs of Storm with Lightning Exposure and Strip Away. And then finally we're using the Frostbomb with Clarity and Vitality. This is your basic setup up until you get our build's one of the most important skills. Next up we have our passive skill tree. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach, and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell damage node and make our way like this, until we get the raw power and the Path of Storms. Then now we make our way all the way up here, and get this overexposure. Then from here we can circle back a little, and get the Arcane Blossom and then these 2 more nodes. Then now we make our way all the way up here until the top, then take the right like this, and get these 2 nodes, called the Power Conduction and the Pure Power. And now from here we can make our way all the way to the right side, and on our way we can pick up all of these nodes in no particular order. As soon as you unlock the Constant Gale Ascension, which gives us the Arcane Surge, then now we can invest our points into the left side. But until that point, just get everything on the right. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Constant Gale, then the Force of Will, then next up get the Strike twice, and then finally get the Scourging Winds node. To simplify my decision making so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the raw power, Path of Storms, Arcane Blossom and the Overexposure, as this will give us the biggest build upgrades to not only damage but mana as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more mana regen, more skill effect duration, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. As most importantly, because of the Archmage skill, the more mana we have, the more insane damage we can do. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand. And you don't have to, but if you can, then get some of these bonus stats like increased spell damage and lightning damage to attacks. Also, extra mana stat could be helpful as well. Then for the helmet we have the Coral Circlet with Energy Shield, and for the bonus stats get the Maximum Life, Fire Resistance and Cold Resistance. Then for the chest we have the Bone Raiment with Energy Shield, percentage increase to max Energy Shield and the Fire and Cold Resistance. Then for the belt we have the Ornate Belt with reduced charm charges, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for the gloves we got the Jeweled Gloves with energy shield, and for the bonus stats get the maximum life, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the Feathered Sandals with energy shield, and for the bonus, at this time you 100% only want this, and it is as high movement speed as possible. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, and for the extras we want any other type of resistances like the lightning and etc. While on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and for the extras again we want more resistances of any type or the maximum energy shield. And then finally for the amulet we got the Azure Amulet with increased mana regeneration, and for the extras we have maximum energy shield. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon is the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. Specifically, the lightning damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize energy shield, maximum life, and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. We want to start our main rotation by first off activating the Archmage, which while active will give our non-channeling spells cost additional mana, but now in return we will deal extra lightning damage based on our DPS and our maximum mana. And then from here we can simply spam the Spark and the Orb of Storm, and this will fill our entire screen with the lightning that will destroy enemies in seconds. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation, and then use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific situation. If you ever run into the mana problem, then remember all the ways that I previously said on how we can increase it, and then also we can use the Mana Tempest and Mana Remnants to recover it even faster. And this might sound obvious, especially at the beginning when you might not have unlocked the Archmage skill, but if you run out of mana, then just simply cast less skills and wait. You will be doing very high damage anyways, so casting fewer skills won't really impact the gameplay that much, but it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're under-geared or under-leveled. This setup is known as the Lightning Arrow build, which is currently one of the best and fastest setups that you can use to farm maps and other endgame content. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses, by us having also a very high boss damage by using the Cast on Shock and the Ball Lightning. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Ranger has many tools to address this problem. And with the optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. So if you like using only 2 skills and completely speedrunning through the hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Deadeye. Then for the first skill we have the Lightning Arrow, and for our support gems we want to go with the Martial Tempo, Ice Bite, Cold Infusion and Primal Armament. Then second we got the Lightning Rod with the Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Conduction and the Rising Tempest. Next we got the Herald of the Thunder with the Lightning Infusion and the Lightning Penetration. Next we have the Herald of the Ice with Cold Penetration, Magnified Effect and the Elemental Focus. Next we are also using the Wind Dancer with the Blind. Next we have the Orb of Storm with the Chain, Unleash, Overabundance and the Persistence. Then we got the Cast on Shock with the Ball Lightning, Deceleration, Inspiration and the Impetus. And finally for the last one we got the Voltaic Mark with Persistence, Inner Weight and the Lightning Mastery. Most of this build is structured around using the Lightning Arrow and the Lightning Rod to instantly shot his DPS lightning projectiles, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guides. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node and go like this until we get the Honed Instincts and the Vile Wounds. Then next we want to keep on moving to get this entire thing, and mainly we want to aim for the Master Fletching and disharness the elements. Then from here we want to get back at this point and then keep going down like this, and then when the path splits, then now we want to go to the left bottom. So let's make our way like this, and then finally we want to get both these lightning nodes, so the Lightning Rod and the Flash Storm. Then from here we want to circle back and go to the top right side and get the Mental Toughness and the other mana regen nodes that will help us with the potentially low mana. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock all the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority as they're the most important to acquire early on in the game to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Gathering Winds, then second get the Projectile Proximity specialization with the Point Blank option, then next get the Endless Munition, and then finally we want to select the Wind Ward. And also preferably we want to get 1 mana on kill Juvel, or at least get the mana on kill on the quiver. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Also, our Lightning Ranger has a very strong single target damage, so farming boss maps or essences is also a good option. So when we start, we want to first of all get to the bottom left side like this, then now we want to go to the top right side and get all of these passives. And then finally from here you want to go to the top middle part and get the rest of the passives in no particular order. Then next we have our gear, and for this build you only need about 100 spirit. The weapon of our choice is the expert dual string bow. This is the most important item that we have, so look for the highest cold or physical damage bow that you can get your hands on. Also, lightning damage is a good option as well, but for sure you want to avoid fire damage. Generally, I would value additional arrows over a 50 DPS increase, so keep that in mind. And then for bonus stats, we want the bow attacks to fire an additional arrow, then physical damage increase, more lightning damage, or plus extra levels to all projectile skills. Next we also have the offhand called the primed quiver, and good stats to look for are the cold or physical damage, increased damage with the bow skills, attack speed, dexterity, projectile speed, level of all projectile skills, and mana on kill. And generally, this is the place where we want at least one source of mana on kill, to reduce our low mana against bosses. Then for the helmet we have the advanced scaled helm with armor and evasion. And for bonus stats we want more armor, more evasion, max life and cold resistance. And it's very important to reach 75% resistance in all 4 stats, so try to get as much of that as possible on your gear. Then for the chest we have the expert studded vest with a lot of evasion. Yes, I chose to sacrifice life for more evasion, and this will give us a lot more utility, especially in the endgame. And then for the extra stats we want max life, more evasion and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the utility belt that recovers our flask 20% quicker. And then for bonus stats we want more max life, and any other resistances like lightning or chaos. Then for gloves we got the advanced doubled gauntlets with armor and evasion. And for extras we want max life, chaos and fire resistance. Then for boots we're using the advanced embossed boots with evasion. And for more we 100% want to get as high movement speed as possible and also cold resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Thief's Torment. And here I want to give you a huge disclaimer. So if at the start of this build you're struggling with mana, then this one ring can completely solve it because of the 15 mana gain per each hit, so we will basically never run out of it. But as it is a quite expensive ring, so you can go for other rings as well. This Thief's Torment is only needed for bosses, so usually use different rings for mapping. It's the only source of mana on hit in the game, so without the ring you will instantly run out of mana on the boss. You don't really need it in the lower tier Waystones, but once you get to the top tier, then you will most likely need it. So try to get it before most other players find out about it. And then on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance. And for more bonuses we want max life and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Stellar Amulet, which gives us more to all attributes. And for extras we want to get more to spirit. Overall for this build I recommend to get 95 intelligence for the ball lightning and the cast on shock. Plus I have a level 11 gem for the ball lightning and also a level 11 for a cast on shock. Of course these gems can be a higher level, but then it will require more intelligence. So getting them to level 11 I found it to work the best. And now finally let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And as you can see from the gameplay, this is one of the most powerful but easiest and simplest builds in the game. So our main rotation is just to use the lightning arrow and the lightning rod, for easy to kill monsters, which are most of our targets. But then specifically for bosses, you can then place down the Orb of Storms, and spam the lightning rod and cast the volatile mark. This will give you a great buff against the boss and insane amount of shock lightning damage for the single target. On top of this, if you're a new player, then some mechanics may seem a bit weird, so let me quickly explain. If your lightning rod or the cast on shock is not working, then either way try to self-cast the volatile mark, and then place down the Orb of Storms, or perhaps after your volatile mark is out and the Orb of Storms, then only then start spamming the lightning rod. Also, if you're low level and you can't use the cast on shock, then you need to put a skill gem in that skill, or the game itself won't allow you to get the effect. And then finally, if you're low geared and run into a mana problem, especially against bosses, then try to get one Juvel with the mana on kill, or mana on kill from our quiver. For most players, there's no real way to solve mana for bosses until you get the Thieves' Torment Ring, but using simple strategies may help as well. This might sound obvious, especially at the beginning, when you might not have yet unlocked the mana on kill, but if you run out of mana then you just simply want to cast less skills and wait. You'll be doing very high damage anyways, so casting few less skills won't really impact the gameplay that much, but it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're undergeared or underleveled. This setup is a big AoE build which focuses on armor breaking offensively, and then the block defensively. Our main playstyle will revolve around using the Stampede skill, which will charge our character forwards and create patches of jagged ground, which then are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. By us using the Ancestral Warrior Totem skill with the jagged ground support gem, this will create now 2 patches of the jagged ground per each use, and will also be exploded by the Stampede. So we will be able to basically one-shot huge amount of grouped up enemies. Then also for leveling and mid-game, we are going to be using a two-handed mace and taking the anvil's weight and the imploding impacts for the first 2 ascensions. While then later, when we have enough strength, we will invest into the Giant's Blood Keystone, which will unlock the ability for us to use a two-handed weapon in just one hand, so then we can use the shield on our rough hand. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For main class, we have chosen the Warrior, and our ascendancy is the Warbringer. And then for our basic skill, we got the Mace Strike with support gems such as the Rage, Close Combat and Maim. Then second, we got our most important skill, the Stampede, with support gems like the Momentum, Fist of War, Brutality and Stomping Ground. Then next we got the Leap Slam with Martial Tempo, Holy Descent and Culling Strike. Then next we have the Ancestral Warrior Totem with the Rolling Slam, Jagged Ground, Ancestral Urgency and Heavy Swing. Next we have the Scavenge Planting with the Vitality and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Hammer of the Gods with the Second Wind, Hourglass, Execute and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got the Seismic Cry with just one support gem, the Premeditation. And finally for the last one we got Attrition with no gems. Most of our build is structured around using the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up, but which happens rarely as we can basically spam it 24/7. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until we unlock the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem skills. So first off, we have the Earthquake skill with support gems like the Lassacrate and the Fist of War. Then next we got the Shockwave with the Overabundance and the Bloodlust. Then next we also got Mace Strike with just the Rage gem. And finally, we are using the Rolling Slam with the Martial Tempo. Next we have our passive skill tree. For most new players, this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. In extremely simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more from completing certain quests. In general, we have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and the keystones. All of them will act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the melee damage node and make our path like this until the brutal node. Then next we take Smash and make our way to the singular purpose like this. Then now we go back and take Relentless for early game recovery. And then from here we again go back to previously where we left off and keep going forwards and then take the right path until we get to the Resolute technique. Then now we go back where our paths split and then we take the right side and make our way all the way to the Hail Heart. Also, while we are doing this, on our way we can grab the Spike Pit. And then from here, after you get your first ascension into the Anvil's Weight, then now you can begin filling out all the other armor break nodes and all the other nodes that you can see in this tree. And from here there's no specific priority that you should follow. And then finally, let's go back all the way to the middle again, and for our ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Anvil's Weight, then get Imploding Impacts, then now get the Renleash Training, and then for the last one take the Turtle Charm. To simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the Brutal, Smash and the Singular Purpose nodes, as this will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest, we wanted to invest into more recovery, more defense, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. In PoE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your skill points recklessly. You can of course refine your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you're following this setup, then make sure not to deviate from it, as some of my decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to definitely pay off later. So please use the exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier to follow the path. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forge Maul with the critical and speed. And this is not required, but you can also, if you want, get the extra stats like the added flat physical damage, increased percentage to the physical damage, and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Elite Great Helm with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, max strength, and cold resistance. Then for chest we have the Abyssal Cuirass with the armor, and for the extra stats we want to get max life, more strength, and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Fine Belt with the flash gain, or 0.2 charges per second. And for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength, and cold resistance. Then for gloves we got the Advanced Tempered Mitts with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more armor, more to all attributes, and cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the Expert Stone Greaves with armor, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, increased movement speed, and the lightning resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength, or just more resistances to all elements. While on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and the extra stats are max life, more to all attributes, and more percentage to all elemental resistances. And then finally for the amulet we got the Ember Amulet with more strength, more max life, and fire resistance. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. But remember that your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize flat added physical damage, percentage increased physical damage, and percentage increase to attack speed. Specifically, the physical damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize pure armor base types, and look for a combination of modifiers for life, resistances, and strength. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So, we want to start our main rotation by using the Stampede, which will create patches of the jagged ground, which are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. Then after that we use the Ancestral Warrior Totem, which will create now 2 jagged grounds. And then finally we use the Rolling Slam, which will also explode the Stampede and do massive amounts of AoE damage. Then from here we can use the Leap Slam to reposition and get great recovery because of the Holy Descendant support gem. Then the Hammer of the God skill is our finisher for tankier targets, so use it when the boss is at or below 35% HP, so we could benefit from the Execute support gem. And by the way, if you don't have enough spirit to maintain the Scavenge Planting and the Attrition, then feel free to use the Scavenge Planting during the general gameplay and deactivate it to then activate the Attrition for only against bosses. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation and use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific fight.